I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. For any of you who are in the public who are new to this process, thank you for being involved. And if you go out to the Envision Alachua website, you can see any of the meetings that we've had over the last few years on this to get up to speed, or just see Rose or myself after the meeting, and we can work out a time to sit down and bring you up to speed. For the task force members, you know, I'm excited tonight. I think when you see that we're to a point now that I thought the plan was good before, but when I look at what we're about to present tonight, I think we're in very good shape, and we're hopeful to get your sign off on it that it's time to sit there and move this thing forward and take this to the next step. So, and I apologize in advance because for the 4 years of this process, you guys have not had to have me do a PowerPoint presentation, but unfortunately tonight that tradition is going to be broken. But part of the reason for that is I think you're going to start to see a lot of noise again in the future as this starts to sit there and roll forward. And I just wanted to take about 5 to 10 minutes just to bring you up to speed on just sort of you know, what we do as far as our development projects, and then also most importantly, what does it take to ultimately bring this to a reality? And you know, you'll see off of this that while you know, you may read differently in the paper every so often, but this actually is in one of the businesses that we're in, and you'll see that we're doing this in multiple locations throughout the U.S. So I'll pass it on to Daniel, and thank you again for your involvement.
Great. Thank you all for coming out this evening. Again, my name is Daniel Iacofano, the moderator for the Envision Alachua Task Force. It's great to have this turnout and to be here at GRU. Yvette, I don't know if you wanted to say anything about our facility here, and you're our host for the evening, so please.
Okay. Well, I'll just say on behalf of our new general manager as of today, Ed Bilarski, Kathy V, our outgoing general manager, our leadership team, and in fact our entire staff, we just thank you guys for coming out to the Eastside Operations Center. We're very proud of this building. It's a LEED certified building. We're very happy with this space, and we love for community folks to be able to come out and use this space. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you for bringing us in, and it is appropriate given the fact that this is like a workshop and this is a working committee, and also we're talking about a job creation machine that is Envision Alachua. The whole reason we are here is to develop future opportunities for Alachua County residents and beyond. So once again, we have a very full agenda. And before we get into all of that, perhaps we can do a round of self-introductions once again, because it's always a time in between since we last met. Adrian?
Good evening. I'm Adrian Taylor, the Vice President of Chamber Development and Operations, as well as the Senior Pastor of the Spring Hill Church.
Thank you. John?
John Sabine at Plum Creek. I'm a supervisor in our forestry department.
Hi, Yvette Carter, Community Relations, Gainesville Regional Utilities.
Bill Strasburger, Clay Electric.
Okay.
Doug Jones, Santa Fe College.
Thank you.
I'm Dorothy Brown. I'm a tax accountant, but I'm retiring this year.
Okay.
Lucky you. I'm Lindsay Krieg, Director of Volunteer Service for UF Health Shands Hospital.
Julian Kinsey, Cox Media.
Karen Cole Smith, Santa Fe College.
Rob Brinkman.
Scott Coons, North Central Florida Regional Planning Council.
Susan Baird, Boss Hart Realty Services and former county commissioner.
Jason Hurst, Front Street Commercial Real Estate Group.
Rose Fakler with Plum Creek.
Kevin Thorpe, Senior Pastor of Faith Church.
I'm Susan Davenport, and I'm the interim president and CEO of the Gainesville Area Chamber, and I'm replacing Tim Giuliani, who was a former member.
Jack Payne, Senior Vice President for Agriculture and Natural Resources, University of Florida.
I'm Steve Seibert. I'm sort of sad to live and work in Tallahassee.
And I'm Joan Chaplick, MIG.
So for this evening, we have a lot of update information, some new material, and as Todd alluded to in his opening remarks, a revised sector plan application, which we're very excited about. because we believe we have addressed all the major issues, all the feedback we've gotten from the last year or so of this process. You're going to see an improved plan, and one that we believe is very responsive to not only community issues, but also to the environment, and it still maintains our major focus on jobs and economic development and education and workforce development as well. And in fact, that's one of the update items. We are very pleased and very excited to bring you up to date on the recent signing of the Alachua County Education Compact. That is a first major victory of this process. It took the efforts of many people here on the task force to pull that off, and we'll have someone here in just a few minutes to talk about that and get us rolling. Something we're calling the science of economic progress, and what we're learning as we continue to search out best practices and projects around the country, and learning those lessons and applying them here in this particular project is what it's all about. We have an update on Plum Creek development projects that have been happening throughout the Southeast. Todd will come back and inform us about that, which I think attests to the staying power that Plum Creek has demonstrated on all of its projects, and this being one of those. And we can obviously see how dedicated and committed the company is to seeing this project through. And then we'll also have an update about transforming Greater Gainesville and some of the recent efforts in recruitment of businesses and economic opportunities to the county. That will bring us to the sector plan application process and a fairly strong update. Once again, we'll hear from Tim Jackson, our lead planner on the project. We'll talk about Alachua communications, and then once again, we'll have further time for discussion among all of you here on the task force. So first of all, Envision Alachua, as you know, is this strong framework of vision and goals with education and community development at the top. Economic opportunity, environmental conservation all work together, in our view, to create an inclusive future for the county. We're going to continue our focus on making this an economically competitive region with opportunities for all, at the same time to provide environmental conservation. The Emerald Necklace is just one of the many multiple benefits that will accrue as a result of this project coming online. And with that, I'd like to have Ian Fletcher from Gainesville Area Chamber of Commerce talk about this huge opportunity, and it's really a major victory. Let's give Ian a round of applause for that. Here you go.
Good evening. Thank you guys for having me here tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. You heard about the education pillar, one that I heard that Dr. Karen Cole-Smith pushed so hard that made Envision Alachua. You guys decide to add that to this. This picture is a picture of 21 individuals, 21 of the most high-powered individuals in our community to sign our education compact. The number that actually signed the compact was 26. These 21s were the ones that were able to show up. And of course, I'll pause and thank Todd and Rose for their commitment to education. I don't know if you saw it in the newspaper on May the 24th, there was a big ad taken out for the Alachua County Compact thanks to Envision Alachua, and so we're really pleased with that. Spent a lot of time today on the highway, 75 and the turnpike going to Orlando. Because of the Education Compact, we were able to become a part of the Florida College Access Network, and there was a summit today in Orlando, and I was able to attend that, and there was so much rich information of what community is doing and people looking at our community and wondering how they could do the same thing that we do. The signatories, as you could see, they're all on this list. Again, one of the hardest lesson I learned in this process was logistics, right? As if I worked for UPS. Logistics of this situation was to learn who I wanted in the room and who I needed their schedule cleared first, and everything else will fall into place. And that was the number one thing I had to learn. And so what was really funny, Dr. Roberts committed, and then Dr. Sasser committed. But then I had to talk to Dr. Sasser's administrative assistant. And she called Dr. Roberts' administrative assistant because it's the first time she heard about the process. And then when Dr. Fox came on board, I knew that it was clear sailing. It wasn't an easy sail to that day, but once we got to that day, everything went downhill from there. So as you can see, the rest of the names of the signers. These are our key focus areas, as always: K-12 education, early childhood education, the Parent Academy, which we're hoping to get the bus up and running by August, higher education, and workforce development. Our outcomes, of course, as always, the three outcomes: improve high school graduation, school readiness rate, improve high school graduation rate, and create an aligned and productive workforce for our community. These are the 6 goals as I shared with you the last time, and we have some next steps. So where do we go after the sign-in? Great event, great things that happen on that day, great things to take time to pause and celebrate. So now the next step to that, of the 26 partners, we met with Santa Fe, the Alachua County Public School, United Way, and the Education Foundation, and we all got in a room to start to discuss what are the measurements of the compact. How are we going to measure ourselves moving forward? And so that conversation went really well with Lisa Armour over at Santa Fe, and along with Stephen Starks, who's with the school system, and they're going to be working together to pull all of this information together, and we're going to develop our metric system. 15 members of the sign-in committee was asked to be on the oversight stewardship committee. And so I was off all of last week, and I was in Orlando today, so I'm hoping when I get back to the office, I'll have all those invitation cards back into my possession so we could schedule our first stewardship committee meeting. After we get the stewardship committee together, we're going to put together working groups of educators. We're going to get individuals from Santa Fe, from the University of Florida, from the school system, and other educators around our community so that we can develop the strategy. One of the things we didn't want to do, we didn't want to come to the table with the goals, the strategy, and the metrics. We wanted the signers to feel a part of this. We wanted them to have a say-so in what it is we were doing in our community. And so we're going to work to put together our working group, which the oversight committee will choose, and then hopefully we can get that working group up and running in July. With our intended outcome for this is hopefully, and I know some people want to do it in September, and I was thinking since we had the education forum last year in October, hopefully we have an education summit where we would unveil our measurements and we would unveil our strategies moving forward. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Ian. We'd love to have Dr. Karen Cole-Smith say a few words here too, as well, to help round out the presentation and where we're going next with this education compact.
As a task force, we realized early on that in addition to addressing the 2 major areas, economy and environmental conservation, that the education piece was a piece that was integral to the overall success of this plan. And so we're really excited to be partnering with the Education Compact for several reasons, and I'd like to take a few minutes and talk about those things. Why is this so critical for us to have that partnership and be aligned with the Education Compact? The first critical area is as the businesses come to Alachua County and to some of the other rural areas, it's going to be important that all of the educational institutions are together and are charged with providing the training and educational resources and materials for those businesses. Yes, we want the businesses to come here, but we want our local people to stay here. You know, when they get their degrees or earn their credentials, it's important that they remain in the local community. Secondly, we felt that from an educational standpoint that it was very important for us to take a proactive approach and focus on early intervention as it relates to education. I think you all know that if we look at the educational research, that by the time young people reach the 9th grade, they have already decided whether they're going to graduate from high school. And so at that point, they began to disengage. And so it's very important for us as a community, as educators, as leaders, as community activists, it's very important for us to make sure that we take a proactive role and that we start as early as possible. What you'll find in many of the schools is that most of those programs and initiatives are starting at the 9th, 10th, 11th grade. So we need to look at what types of educational programs can we put in place at the elementary level and at the middle school level so that we can have an educational pipeline so that those young people are knowing that when I get to the next level, I am preparing myself either for a career, for college, or for the workplace. Thirdly, the educational task force, we had to recognize that at every educational level, we really needed to reach people where they were. Everybody's not going to college, and that's okay. And so we have to be sure that we have the vocational training, the other technical training, and other certifications for those individuals who may not want to pursue 4-year degrees or master's degrees or PhDs. I think you've heard it said before, we really have to reach people where they are. And we have to make sure that we are inclusive and make sure that there is equity and equal access in our community. That's very important. Fourthly, the East County Education Committee was formed with the goal of making sure that those persons in East Gainesville, that they are not left out. So how do we monitor and track their success? How do we make sure that they are aware of all of the educational materials and resources that are going to help them get from point A to point B? We cannot marginalize those individuals who have limited education and limited skills. We have to make sure that everybody's involved and that everybody has some access to educational materials and resources. I think most of you are aware with all of the efforts that we have been focusing on as it relates to the digital divide. For many of you, there are about 15 low-income housing developments right in East Gainesville, and yet by the year 2016, all of the young people will be taking all of their tests via computers. And so if there is no access to technology, no access to computers, then immediately those persons already are denied services and have to deal with barriers to educational equity. So one of the major projects that we have now going on in connection with the Neighborhood Housing Authority, the NAACP, the East Gainesville Instruction, and the East County Education Committee is to make sure that in every one of those low-income housing developments that there are some computer centers and that the persons who live in those low-income housing developments have access to training and are provided mentoring and tutoring and the necessary support with our goal of how do we narrow the digital divide. Fifthly, we wanted to make sure that while we're sitting here talking about this plan, we really need to hear from the voices of the people who are much younger. And so one of the other goals is to make sure we bring together the people who are 15, 20, 25 years old so that we can hear their voices and hear what do they see as the strengths or the challenges or the barriers, and what is their vision for education in Alachua County for the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years. So that's really one of the other goals, that we want to make sure that we hear the voices of the persons that are young and that will be directly impacted by this plan in the next 20 years. 6, we talked about the importance of collaboration, but equally important was making sure that we have some established timelines and that there is an accountability piece so that everything we talk about, we're making it very clear to the community that we're definitely going to follow through. So often when you have conversations with people in the community, they often talk about broken promises. So we don't want to have broken promises. If we identify certain goals, certain outcomes, then we need to have timelines associated with those goals and outcomes. And we need to make sure that there is a level of accountability, whether we're talking about accountability from an individual standpoint, group, community, neighborhood, whatever that entity is, the accountability piece must be evident. And then in the final analysis, what's most important is that those that are involved in the Envision Alachua, we want to make sure that education and job training is linked to future employment opportunities so that everybody in the community can at least be able to better provide for their families. I think someone asked me the other day, Karen, what are you most passionate about? And I said, I'm most passionate about the people that are near poor. The people who are poor, at least they have some access to services, some programs, some resources. And the people who are middle class and here, we do okay. But the people who are near poor, those are the people who are hovering just above the line. They're not poor enough to have access to those services, and they don't make enough to really survive. And so many of those persons have 2 jobs, 3 jobs in an effort just to make ends meet. And so we want to really do something about addressing the poverty issue in Alachua County so that those persons can have some access to mobility and that we can do a much better job in terms of reducing poverty in our community. I've said it before, I'll say it again, that education remains the great equalizer, and the Envision Alachua Task Force and the East County Education Committee members, we are thrilled to see this collaboration and this cohesive effort with the Education Compact as we move our community forward. Thank you very much.
You're here.
Fantastic. Any follow-up questions, comments for either Ian or Karen on this important topic?
Todd? My only comment to it again is thank you to you guys sitting around this table, because this was an idea that was generated here, and it's been great to sit there and watch this in our local community. That something that's come out of this has now become reality, and we're on the radar. I don't know if it's a good thing to be on the radar of Tallahassee or not, but I know we're on the radar when it comes to this, because this is one of these, we're a cutting edge community for going through and signing this compact, and thank you for everyone for helping make that a reality.
Absolutely, thank you. Susan?
Thank you. And Todd, to add a little bit more to that, as we see the possibility of the expansion of Alachua County into the east side, it really balances out the educational knowledge and resources. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, once you increase the commercial and even residential, you get more numbers, more income, and so you have more to work with. So I think that with all of those elements put into place, it's going to help and get the possibility of not to have those broken promises. What I think we're doing now is at least bringing out the possibility, and that's where the community needs to come out even more so to make sure that it's understood that that is what we need, and to therefore understand that it's not just one-sided conversation we're having, but something that's going to be complete with the resources, numbers, and money.
Mm-hmm. Very good point. And not one-sided with respect to people or geography. That's right. What we say here. Good. Thank you. Other points? I just wanted to observe as well that in the work we did over the last 4 years and looking at other parts of the United States have succeeded in economic development. Think about Austin, Texas, for one. It's a very powerful case example. But the one thing they did not address very well, and they acknowledge that, is this whole educational component. And as a result, not everybody was swept up in the economic progress over there. And we said, we can't do that here. We have to bring everybody up and in and along with this process. And that was the commitment. And I think Karen and others really championed this issue. and we're starting to make progress. This is right up there with the best practices around the nation with respect to education, business, community partnerships. You've got an unprecedented linkage of the county schools, Santa Fe College, the University of Florida. This is a very powerful opportunity, and I think we're really on the right track here. And in that same vein, we wanted to share with you the results of a recent field trip that a number of us were privileged to embark on to the city of Greenville, South Carolina, not too far away. And I labeled it the science of economic progress, because I've never seen anybody with a more complete model, a successful complete model of economic development than right there in Greenville, South Carolina. And some of the interesting findings. So they started in the late 60s, early 70s with the realization that their textile industry was evaporating. It was all going overseas. And the business community and the elected leaders came together and said, what are we going to do? This is a crisis. We don't have a future unless we take action. And so they formed an alliance with Clemson University. Sounds familiar. City, university. They also then created what they called the Upstate Alliance. So in South Carolina, they have the lowlands, the mid-state, and the upstate. This was all the counties there surrounding the city of Greenville and Spartanburg. They realized they had some key assets, the airport. They built an inland port, which is essentially a transfer point between rail and truck and air. And then they also attracted Michelin Tire Company from Europe, the famous French tire maker. And well, then what happened? Clemson went to BMW and said, we'll build you a wind tunnel so you can test your cars over here in South Carolina. We'd love to have you involved. And BMW said, no, we have our own wind tunnel. Then they said, well, what do you want? And they said, well, we'd like to have a degree in automotive research and engineering. In fact, there is no such thing as a PhD in that subject. Can you create that? And they said, we will do that. And they formed the Clemson University International Center for Automotive Research. Then BMW said, we're on board. We're coming in. We want to be part of that. And they built a factory over there. General Electric has come in. And then we now have Boeing, Mercedes, Volvo is in there. Not surprisingly, it's formed an automotive engineering and research cluster. And look at those ingredients. And all of this regional partnership has flowed money into the city, into the schools, and you have the city of Greenville that used to look like this, and now it looks like this. And it's a very thriving, very successful downtown. But this was a result of, not a cause of, the economic development. It was that partnership and a very strong, dedicated approach. And let's look at the scorecard. Greater than 43,000 jobs were created. Now, it took over 40 years, but that's what we're talking about. This is not an overnight success. This is not going to happen next week, but you have to start. You have to plant the flag, and then I would estimate that's at least on average over 1,000 jobs a year. Not bad at all. And they're acting to cut their unemployment, and they now have living wage jobs that do, in fact, span the whole spectrum of jobs at different levels of ability, different levels of education. So the lessons learned from that are certainly germane here, too. They had a sense of urgency spurred on by the loss of that textile industry. And I want to say, I mean, are we satisfied with the way conditions are right now for all of Alachua County, for East Alachua County? Are we satisfied with that?
No.
No. So we have this urgency. We can't afford to leave people out of the economic progress. And that's part of what was a success in Greenville. Local government, local business people, they came together in partnership. Higher education was central to the success. They formed an alliance, and it didn't matter where the company went. If it was anywhere near that region of upstate, it was a success. They supported each other because they knew it would create critical mass and draw more and more economic opportunity to the region. And this is not just a phrase here. I mean, we saw the kinds of jobs that are created as we've been discussing. Dale Brill has presented that in other occasions, and over the last several years, we've seen the case studies, we've seen the research. This is not us making up these stories. These are real stories of success, and we're looking at it and applying the ingredients of success here on Envision Alachua. And it keeps going. I mean, that's the proposal for the ICAR. It's being built out. It's a research park. We got to tour it. Parts of it are built, but the other parts are not. I mean, they have a middle school for middle school age children right in the middle of this thing. So when you go to that school, it doesn't mean you would go into automotive engineering, but you're kind of lined up. And it's really a great opportunity for those young people to see that it's not just an education. The job they might get is right down the curve in the road. And that's the kind of park we're talking about creating. So it's very feasible here. The Research Triangle Park, Purdue University, Cummings Research, Mission Bay, San Francisco, Virginia Tech, University Park, Cambridge, Lake Nona Medical City. So again, this is all information you can acquire, you can look at it. We've done the research, and we have the formula here going, and this education compact is one of the starting points. It's an underpinning for the whole foundation of Envision Alachua. We found these quotes recently in Florida Trend magazine, just this month, and it was so on target we had to bring it to you. UCF President John Hitt and USF President Judy Genshaft have aggressively capitalized on their school's economic heft, turning their institutions into economic development engines. In return, they've been embraced by government and business leaders, okay? Embraced because they're bringing opportunity. They understand how the schools create strong, stable employment bases. And the two universities are now playing big roles in efforts to redevelop the city centers of Orlando and Tampa. And I would go so far as to say that we won't get downtown Gainesville with all the boarded up and empty stores and whatnot, very underperforming downtown. That won't turn around until we do this balanced development pattern, which is like what we've been talking about here. It's got to be balanced in more ways than one. Culturally, ethnically, income-wise, status-wise, job spectrum-wise. That's what we talk about balance here. And I think we have enough evidence to prove to people that this is not just about saving the environment, although we are doing that in significant ways. It's also about saving our people. Okay, so we can't leave that out. The human habitat is equally important to the natural habitat. Let's face it.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you. And looking at what they did, and Todd, you have a good anecdote here. The I-4 corridor from Tampa to Orlando, it's unbelievable. They're doing what we're saying we need to do here. And what was this? Recently, they just announced something?
No, I just said I'm depressed when we know we've been working on this project for too long and coming together when there's a new project on here, the University of Central Florida, Osceola County Advanced Manufacturing Research Campus that just got $10 million in the budget this week that is being developed down in Osceola County where it didn't exist when we started this process. So.
Yeah, they got that while we're still trying to get the planning application
Maybe we'll get land use done in the next 10 years or so.
Okay.